From what I saw, I thought it went from $30 a year to $75 every 2 years.
Okay.
So I don't know whether they made some changes, and the lead-free fee was proposed at $50, and they moved that down to $30.
I'll get you guys the numbers in a minute. Just give me a couple minutes, but I'll get them for you
And
in the
Wes,
chat.
I don't know if you had any feedback on that either.
No, it had passed both the Senate and the House at 120, but then it went into conference committee where there were, it sounds like there was back and forth.
Okay. If we could, for the record, please get the members of who were on the conference committee in case we have to speak to them for future years. And talk to them about the importance of this, but it does look like the department will have to lower its expectations on budget and what it can achieve and support, at least for the next year to 2 years. The $30 fee is a one-time fee on the lead-free.
Lead-free, yeah.
And what was it previously?
$10.
$10, okay.
Yeah.
Super low. Okay. $30 you pay, you get certified by the state, not by Green Environmental, and you are out, right?
Right.
Okay, good. All right, other legislation, Wes or Adam? Or Laura? I know you've been tracking.
Wes,
Just
highlighted.
just on House Bill 1367. So that passed the House. That's the lead inspection falsification bill. Passed the House 133-5. The Senate hearing was held and it's on the voting list today in the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee.
The 1367 is on the voting list today.
Yes, it was also there yesterday, but did not get voted on apparently, but is on today as well.
So Adam, you had, I thought, indicated that it was defeated. Did I get that wrong?
No, the fee bill itself, just the
Okay.
raising of the fees.
Okay, that's a separate piece of legislation.
Yeah.
Wes, can you remind the committee that or the commission, we endorsed and supported the bill? Can you remind the commission? what
Yes, the
1367
Lead Commission sent a letter of support both to the House and the Senate committees to support the fees, which would allow civil fees for $50,000 for a person versus the prior statute was just a fee or penalties on the property owner who was involved in a falsification. This would now make the inspectors also individually responsible and have a fine of $50,000 up to.
Okay, and that has passed the House and is in the Senate.
Yes.
Okay, on the voting list. Okay, we will track that today, but if anybody is interested in weighing in on the Senate today, there's where that is, and that is a department-supported bill.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Anything else you want to say on that?
No, I think it was, Delegate Rosenberg was the one that sponsored that one, and I think it was in response to the Green Environmental case.
Yep,
Yeah.
it was. That is correct. Other legislation?
The other one the commission was interested in was Senate Bill 238, House Bill 127. This was a Maryland DHCD bill, and this would allow housing rehab programs to be also operated and assisted by local nonprofit organizations to essentially spread out the ability for people to go locally and get assistance. So the idea there, and Nicola can talk, I think, was to have coordinated whole home now also potentially with rehab from local providers as well as at the state through DHCD. But
And the status of that bill is?
it's passed both the House and Senate.
Okay, so it is heading to the governor?
Yes.
Okay, good work, Nicola. Good job. Rick Kessler, good morning.
Good morning. I just wanted, just going back for a second, sorry I couldn't move fast enough. On the BRFA fees, I just make clear that the department has weighed in with House leadership and Senate leadership regarding the fees and our desire to see them increased from where they are in the current version of the BRFA, preferably to where they were when we submitted our proposal. So
So we're still, the department is still working that.
yep.
Okay,
We are.
gotcha. understand.
So
And that goes for the lead-free as well as the re-registration units. Is that correct, Rick?
all the fees.
Fantastic. Okay. We'll look forward to that. You got about 7 days to get that done, right? Or less
Any
than.
any help is welcome.
You got it.
But yes, we are not resting and
Okay.
accepting.
If another weigh-in from the commission is needed, we will do that for certain. And any of the commissioners who wish to weigh in on behalf of their organizations too. I do believe the department has great need when we look at the green environmental issue, great need for these fees and the enforcement actions. So any other legislation? Hearing none, we'll move on. The old lead-free, do we have a hand? Cliff?
Yeah,
Yes.
Cliff. Yep.
Yeah, and Madam Chairperson, I would be remiss if I didn't ask whether or not we need to have an agenda item on federal changes in the landscape for lead.
Yeah, I was going to get to that in my opening remarks and didn't. I was going to run through the old and new business. And before we did, I would like to have a discussion on that because I think there's some significant things to talk about. We can, if Susan and Chris and Fred will allow us, we can insert it here. I think it's a very, very important topic. Thank you, Cliff. Lots of things happening from yesterday. Would you like to start, Dr. Mitchell, on the changes at CDC, which are going to dramatically impact federal support on lead and asthma?
Well, for the sake of the recording, let me temper my remarks by saying that there is much more that we do not know at this point than we do know. What we do know is that a significant reduction in force has happened across the entire CDC, that there is a plan that has not been well described to merge a bunch of agencies into the new secretary's vision of making America healthy again. As far as I know at this point, and I don't know that this is public at this point, but as far as I can tell, we do not yet know, but have a strong suspicion that some of the most hard-hit reductions in force took place in the areas of environmental health and occupational health. That as far as I can tell, and I do not, again, have confirmation of this, and so I want to be very, very clear that this is a very rapidly evolving situation. But I can't speak to the fate of the lead program as a whole at CDC because we have not received official confirmation about how much of it might still exist in either its current form or any form, frankly. What I can say is that it's pretty clear that significant reductions in force have occurred with staff across the entire spectrum of disciplines at the CDC. But news reports clearly indicate that probably amongst the hardest hit were those specifically in environmental health, including lead, asthma, climate change, and occupational health. We have not, I cannot tell you who is still left, if anybody, in those programs. We have no indication at all, unless Fred does at MDE, of what this means for any of the cooperative agreements that might be coming from the CDC in the future, or what those might look like. And we have no indication whatsoever of what this means for the current programming. So for example, I have no idea whether or not Baltimore City has heard about anything related to its CDC cooperative agreement. So I can say that the Department of Health is still here in Maryland, and we are still working on public health. MDE is still there, but somewhat similar to what happened in the early days of COVID, we are sort of missing a federal partner in many respects at this point, because even for those folks who are still present or who may still be present, and we don't know, they really do not have authorization to speak to in any public forum of any kind related to agency priorities, current activities, or anything else. So that's what I know.
Yeah, Cliff, I think, and Wendy, do we have hands? Because I can't see that. If we have hands up, please let me know.
Yeah, no, we don't have hands.
A couple of things, right? The dramatic actions happening at the EPA, scuttling so many programs that address lead. Although lead remains in their public health priorities and in their pillars effectively that of the new administration. But I think the commission ought to write a letter to Robert Kennedy Jr. Et al. And talk about, number one, the impacts of not having access to surveillance data, critical support, and the impact on neurological, cardiac, and other health here. I think we ought to be on record of that, which it has long been a bipartisan issue in this country, remains a bipartisan issue at some level. But at least to get clarity on these things and to make sure that we do not shut down surveillance systems, we do not shut down preventive funding for prevention here on something so very critical, and something that at least one agency still has as a priority, has issued under this administration as a priority, which seems honestly a little bit, hard to kind of balance these things. But I do think we ought to write at least an initial letter of inquiry, because Maryland has been one of the states that has been documented to be hit the hardest in this country on lead. And this should be a state concern regardless of politics here. I definitely think that not only we're having major threats to maternal child health, we obviously have major threats to environmental health. To date, we are very fortunate that the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has maintained its programs. And if they now close, and I've jinxed it, I'm going to be very sorry about that, but they are still open and running and about to issue new NOFAs. But we cannot afford in this country to have the CDC protection here go away. And they're as troubling as the environmental justice protections for lead at the EPA. So I think I'd like to get some comment about whether the commission should weigh in or not on these, ask appropriate questions. And I guess to ask you, Cliff, does the state, from your department's standpoint, how do you communicate those concerns back up to the federal government at this time?
So what I would say is and I'm sure the chair will understand, I would defer any issues related to communication with the federal government to the deputy secretary, and Office of Governmental Affairs. I could not obviously make that commitment on my own. That would be,
Yeah,
that
no,
would
I'm not
be-
even asking that. I'm just saying on a, like, today, today, I'll ask this for anybody in the city MDE or otherwise. Are you left with any mechanisms to talk to anybody at the federal government?
so sorry, I misunderstood your question. So we have had conversations with, up until this weekend, have had communications with individuals at the CDC who were programmatic in our areas as individuals. That communication has been severely constrained to current activities. And I don't know that that's still possible. I don't know if those individuals are still working there, literally. People I talked to last week may not be in the office anymore. And in many cases, I know they are not in the office.
Is the city of Baltimore's lead program health department lead program on the line?
Yeah.
I
Could
am.
we-
Good morning.
Good morning, Brianna. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Have you had any conversations? You have some direct grants from CDC. Have you received any communications that you can share?
We have not received any communication. We will be meeting with our accountant. We have been bi-weekly, but not any direct communications on how we should move.
All right. Okay. Other comments on this, on the federal landscape of things? There have been a slew of litigation against the federal government from the city of Baltimore, from the state of Maryland, the Attorney General. And I will say that I think we should be briefing Anthony Brown's office on the potential impact to state agencies of this change.
Nicola
Nicola.
Trans, yeah. Hands up.
Yeah, from our perspective, what we've seen is HUD, at least the lead and the Healthy Home program awards for this year seem to be moving normally. There's frequent communication about the award negotiation. The trainings are scheduled for this month and next month for new grantees. So that seems to be moving. On the DOE side, we are getting responses from technical staff, and then from the program staff, not so much. So there are many emails and to-dos on their lists that the remaining staff seems to be very overwhelmed with, and that is affecting also, our production in terms of submitting reports that need to be accepted by DOE and things like that.
Nicola, have you received any cancellations on any programs from DOE?
No cancellations.
Fantastic. That's good news. I will say, I do think HUD has been proceeding without, as relatively as normal as we know it historically.
Yeah.
Other questions, other comments here, other concerns? Would there be interest from the commission to send a letter of inquiry on these programs? No opinion on that?
That's great.
Yeah, that's great. I'm gonna say it's crazy, folks. Come on.
Cliff Mitchell's hands up and
yeah.
Adam Skolnick's hands up.
Yeah.
I'll defer to Adam first.
No, I mean, a letter of inquiry, I think, makes total sense. 100%. I mean, why wouldn't we be asking what's going on?
Okay. Do you want to defer to the doctor?
I will always defer to Dr. Igniowski.
Okay.
Except that he's muted. So
Yeah.
All right, there we go. Yeah, I think it's perfectly perfectly acceptable and desirable to pursue a letter to the Health and Human Services, because the state depends on federal help with this problem, and knowing where we stand with funding is incredibly important, I think. If they're
Yeah, I'm worried around the testing requirements on Medicaid. I'm worried around what's going to happen on CHIP. I'm worried about what's going to happen for Medicaid managed care requirements to do this work. I think I'm going to request for folks that the Secretary of HHS provide a briefing to the state-led commission, or an opportunity to brief the state-led commission around the vision on lead poisoning prevention, on programs and programmatic funding to state health departments and others to continue the path of one of the best public health advancements the country has seen on childhood lead poisoning, and not to literally throw the baby out with the bathwater here. I think is important. Now, whether we will get it, whether we will get a transparent briefing, I don't know. I have no idea. But if you don't ask, we may not get anything. Do we have other hands up?
No.
Okay. Do I need to take a vote on sending a letter, Wendy?
A motion?
A motion?
I move that we draft a letter to the Health and Human Services Department.
Second.
Okay, we will share a draft of the letter for comment and track for changes to everyone accordingly before it will be sent, but we will send that out. Vote in favor of the motion? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Wait, hold on. Let me lower everything. Okay, so did we have an aye? I thought I heard an opposition. Oh, Ally, you're muted.
Ally voted in favor. I cannot imagine she voted against.
I just unmuted too late. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure I said
Everything.
opposition, and then I
We
heard an
got
aye.
Matt from the OAG that can do an update on green if you want to do that.
Let's do that. Okay.
Yeah, so Matt is on the
sorry.
line.
Yeah,
Sorry,
let's
do you want to take abstentions on the vote?
Yep, we'll take abstentions.
My apologies, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
I will abstain on this one just because I am
Cliff
required to.
Mitchell. Cliff Mitchell and Mangela. Yep.
Or abstain. Okay, any opposed? We will draft that letter. We have, go ahead.
Matthew Koenig from the OAG's office is going to give us an update on green environmental.
Okay.
Matt, you there?
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Hey.
Good morning, Matt.
Good morning.
Go. We're really interested to hear from you.
All right, well, great. So stop me if I'm repeating anything that Mr. Corzine said during the last session, but I think everybody knows this is a circuit court complaint that was filed against two parties. So it's Green Environmental, LLC, and then it's Rodney Barkley, who's named individually in the lawsuit. So the status with the circuit court is, I'll give you the status in two parts. Green Environmental has been served with the complaint via their resident agent. Their time for filing an answer, 30 days, has expired. So my office filed a request for order of default. That order was granted on March 24th, so just about a week ago. They have another 30 days to file a motion to vacate that order. I haven't seen anything, so as far as I know, like I said, they're in default. There's been no motion to vacate. Mr. Barkley individually has now been served. We were having some trouble. We know where he lives, but I think I'm just giving you I think he was evading service. So we filed a motion for alternative service. The circuit court issued an order allowing us to mail the complaint to him via regular mail with no signature required. And then secondly, to post it at his property, just physically at the door. So we've done both of those things. That also happened last week. I can tell you exactly when it was. I think we mailed it on around March 28th, and I believe we posted it on the 28th or 29th, because I've set a date on my calendar for April 30th is when his answer is due. So by the end of this month, we should have a better idea of how and if he is going to respond to the lawsuit. Is he going to file an answer? Are they going to defend? Or are we going to proceed to default proceedings against him and the company? So that's sort of my procedural update. I'll leave it there and ask if there's any questions.
Maddie, I don't know if you have any questions coming up. Let me defer to you first. I've got questions, but Maddie Hutchinson.
Yeah, thank you so much for this update. I guess I have two kind of varying questions. The first one being, now that the case is further along, is it possible for the list of impacted homes to be made available? I know that for like the lead paint violations, the housing department or the health department has a list that's online. Is there a way for community advocates to get a list so that we can also support an outreach and engagement with impacted families?
Yes.
Yeah, Fred, we can coordinate on those letters that was sent. And maybe, do you want to say a little bit more about the letters that MDE sent?
And the question, Matt, I think though, is are those addresses available? Are they now public? Are those homes now public?
They should be. They're listed in the complaint, right, Matt?
So I think we're talking about a couple different universes of properties. There's ballpark 1,000 properties named in the complaint. Now, those properties, there are different types of violations that apply to those properties. There's ballpark 100 to 150 where we have invalidated lead-free certificates, but then there's about 800 properties named in the complaint where it was only, I'll put that in air quotes, only Mr. Barkley's failure to give notice to the department that the inspection was set to occur. But then those groups are different and smaller than the, I think it was around 2,000 homes where the department sent letters to. So that might be a list that Fred and I could work to compile.
So Matt, I would just, to clarify, right, these residential addresses are public record.
Some of them are. Yeah, there's a
Smaller
small
subset.
Yeah.
The smaller subset
Right.
is a
Right.
public.
Everything named in the complaint would absolutely be public. You know, that's not confidential. It's publicly available. We gave that, I know MDE produced that to, there might have been my office, but we had press inquiries and, we gave the reporter the complaint. That's all. And I can share that with whoever too here on this call. That's, yeah, absolutely publicly available.
Okay. If you would share that with the complaint with Wendy to share with the members of the commission, I think that would be great. I think also the city of Baltimore had asked one of our commissioners to get that complaint. So please make sure it is sent to the city of Baltimore Health Department and to the city of Baltimore Housing and Community Development's lead program. I think, Nadia, that's part and parcel of your request. You said you had two-part question. I wanted to make sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually have the complaint myself too, but it doesn't list the 2,000 or like all of the homes. I think it's like a very small subset. I was wondering if there's a way to get the full list of impacted homes, especially the 133 that had like the lead-free certificates.
What is
It
your
might be the exhibits that you're missing, which are also publicly available, and I can share those with Wendy. It should be 2 exhibits, and both of those exhibits will be a list, and there'll be a list of the 2 universes that I was describing. It'll be a list of I believe it's 131 invalidated lead-frees, and then there's a separate list of, again, off the top of my head, I believe it's 808, where there was the notice violation or the failure of Mr. Barkley to give notice to the department that the inspection was occurring. So I'll send those exhibits to Wendy this morning.
And just to repeat again, the state of Maryland has sent notices to the owners of the 131 properties
Yes.
and communicated. Could I ask, and within reason, how many of the 131 properties are they? Let's assume it's 131 owners.
Right.
Has the department heard back from those owners?
Yeah, from some of them, I would say a little over 30% of them have reached back. Some of them have already gotten their properties re-inspected. The other ones were very interested in getting their property re-inspected. So we've gotten a good, from the people that we've talked to.
And all of them have a right for civil litigation against Barkley and Green Environmental. Matt, a question, is the state is right now only pursuing civil litigation against Mr. Barkley? Is that what I understood in the last meeting? Or are you pursuing criminal? And if you're pursuing criminal, are you also pursuing potential referral? Not that I don't know where it would ever go, but referral to the federal government for mail fraud, for sending any invoices or receiving payment in the mail, because that would come with a much bigger penalty against this guy, and the ability to impound bank accounts, et cetera, to get resources back to victims of the crime.
So Fred, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think we've at least given EPA's CID, Criminal Investigations Division, the heads up about this case.
Yes, that's correct.
And then it is my understanding that OAG's criminal division will be pursuing Mr. Barkley. I'm going to leave it just at that because that's just about all I know. And I would also say that what I just said is not.
Well, I urge the department, however possible, right? It does to make a referral to the U.S. Post Office, which has its own attorney generals, to pursue mail fraud if we get any whim that anything was in the mail, checks, invoices, or otherwise.
I like that idea.
Those are very stiff penalties. That's real work, and the post office is a little bit less, has been, at least in the past, less, I don't know, but today, less political and very effective. Other hands up here. Nadia?
Yeah, thank you. For the landlords that you haven't heard back from, I know that it's past the 30-day kind of response window. I was wondering if any of these landlords will be getting like additional notification, outreach, or if the houses will immediately then be put onto like a lead violations list.
Yes to all of that.
Okay. Thank you.
And if I recall, how many lead poisoned children did we find? Was it only one home?
I think it was two.
Two homes?
I believe it was two.
Okay, and are they, and they're both in Baltimore City?
No, one's in Baltimore County, one's in the city.
And they were both referred to the health departments?
Yes.
Okay, so those owners are clearly in a position to get a violation notice themselves, right? For having relied on this. Okay. All right. Adam?
My question was just a plus or minus what percentage were in the city and what percentage were in other jurisdictions of Green Environmental's concerning practices.
Adam, I don't really have an estimate for you. I mean, when I looked at the 808 list, Barclay was doing business all over the state. So, you know, I can only say a substantial portion were in the city, but there's also a substantial number that were in other counties throughout the state. So.
Gotcha.
And
Thank you.
Matt, I assume that there are county attorneys, right, as well, that does the department make those county attorneys, do we provide any notice? Is that a normal thing? And as we understood it from the investigation, he was in DC and Virginia. Did we make referral on that? Or at least has there been a regional discussion from the offices, the appropriate office?
We met with, as a part of our EPA Region 3 meeting, we made all of Region 3 aware. DC had already had him on their radar.
I think he tried to apply in DC.
He did, he applied in DC, but I think they've since suspended his.
But doesn't mean he's not doing these actions anymore, right?
Right, yeah, but they are aware of it, yeah.
Okay. So DOEE has been made aware of it in DC.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Great. Other questions or other comments here?
Yeah, just one last question on this landlord follow-up piece. For the tenants of these homes that have not heard back, will tenants also be getting additional outreach and like support on what they can do?
So the tenants got an initial letter. They got a copy of the letters that were sent to all the property owners.
Mhm.
Beyond that, we won't follow up with them. We will follow up with the, yeah. So you green and healthy.
We are following up with the tenants on that. Nadia, happy to talk to you about that offline.
Okay, thank you.
On the follow-up on the counseling and legal services available to them.
Thank you so much. Appreciated.
Yeah, so I'll ask Laura.
Yeah.
To set a meeting.
Yeah.
Around that, okay?
Do that.
And anybody else who wants to join that along, happy to do that. Let me also, while we're on sort of anything else for Matt, do you go by Matthew or Matt? I'm sorry.
So there are a few Matts in my office, so everyone will shorten it to Matt no matter what I say here. So either one is fine.
Okay, we got you, Matthew. We got you.
Maddie.
Other questions?
Can I say something?
Yes.
Matt is great to work with. He's very, very, very helpful, and he's a dog in the courtroom. So we're so glad to work with him. So thanks, buddy.
Well, Matthew, I want you to meet Laura Nugent, and I want you guys to make sure you're working together on these things. And a monster in the courtroom, a dog in the courtroom.
That's right.
Right? I don't know.
I would not want to be on the other side of the table, that guy. I'll tell you
A
that.
Super Ninja Turtle, whatever people want to be, right?
I do have a
Absolutely.
Remind me to.
So other questions for Matthew, and thank you, Matthew, for leaning in and representing the folks who are harmed by this, and appreciate that.
Sure, happy to help, and happy to give another update, in a month or so. Hopefully we'll know more, and we'll keep it moving.
Does there seem to be reasonably good lean in by EPA Region 3 on this? I mean, or what?
I think initially it wasn't. It was sort of like, we'll look into it. And I think the article helped out a lot. Once that came out, people start paying a little more attention.
Does this guy have is there any evidence that he's working in Philadelphia, where Region 3 is actually headquartered?
That's a possibility. We haven't heard from Pennsylvania. We're from DC and Virginia that he had applied. I don't even think Virginia let his application go through. But we haven't heard from Pennsylvania yet, but I can reach out.
Could we make an inquiry to Pennsylvania as to whether he's tried up there, because it would put a little more pressure. I mean, Rick Kessler may have a better opinion on this than me, but if it's broader, we got a hand somewhere.
No,
we-
there's no hand up.
Okay, that's Fred's phone, sorry. Okay. Everybody, thank you, Matt, and appreciate that action. We have old lead-free certificates, Susan, Chris, Fred.
Good morning, everybody. First of all, I want to say thank you to Chris White and Fred Banks. We've met twice already and had very productive discussions. But I will tell you right now, we have no definitive answers at this point. This is the tip of the iceberg, and we are going to continue to meet on this issue. We will keep the commission informed about what's going on, and we are actually going to be reaching out to other stakeholders who have an interest in looking at the issue about old lead-free certificates. But what I have done, and with Wendy's help, put together a little presentation, because what I have found is that we all come together collectively with knowledge in our own fields. Doesn't necessarily mean that I understand everything in the medical end, nor do the medical individuals understand everything in the inspection world. So what I would like to do is to be able to make a presentation to make sure everybody is on at least the same level of education about what affects the lead paint inspection process. And then going from there, we have committed ourselves to exploring and making sure that we continue to meet in a subcommittee to be able to increase the effectiveness and the accuracy of inspections going forward. So Wendy, if you wouldn't mind, you know, the one thing I will say is on the heels of that last discussion, I will say that, you know, I am all for getting rid of bad inspectors. I do think, however, and I think that Chris and Fred agree with me, that most inspectors are good, but we do have inspectors who don't know. It's not intentional. It is that they don't know any better. So with having said that, Wendy, if you would present that slide presentation, I'd appreciate that assistance.
Sure.
So just to make sure everybody's.
Susan, you're muted.
Thank you, Wendy. So as we all know, is that in 1978, the first regulation for the use of lead in paint came from the Consumer Product Safety Commission standard. It affected only residential paint. The PB is the symbol for lead. That standard went into effect saying that all new paints for residential use, concentration of lead had to be less than 0.06% by weight. And of course, further reductions of lead have occurred, but this is the first one where residential paints had been regulated by the federal government, and therefore then we talk about the pre-1978 housing stock. And that is definitely, and that is by Maryland standard, the definition of an affected property. Next slide. Before I move on, I will say to you, go back just for a second, Wendy, I'm sorry. So, you know, everything that we talk about in terms of the concentrations of lead in paint, what is meant by lead-based paint, what we're going to see is that there is never any paint that's zero. And so that's just something I want to make sure we understand, is that we still don't have a safe amount of lead in paint definition from the federal government. Okay, Wendy, next one. My background is not, my background had started in education. And I am constantly educating individuals, groups, was a lead accredited training provider. I think I still am. It's interesting to me though, that even today, when I meet people who tell me, well, we don't have any children that eat paint chips, it drives me nuts that I have to correct them that it is not the normal behavior of eating paint chips that leads to an elevated blood level child. It is the fact that they just have normal hand-to-mouth activity and that they are ingesting the dust. So education, to me, we can never stop, because we still have so many people who don't really understand the true nature of lead poisoning. And that education has to come from all of us. Next slide. So it's all about this dust. That's the real hazard. And we have to keep that in mind, that dust can come from a variety of sources. Now, it's been stated, and it's probably still true, that most lead dust in a home setting does come from the deterioration of lead-based paint. Next slide. So Maryland, was one of the states that led the nation on realizing that it was all about this dust, and passed regulations that I always refer to by the month and the year that they went into effect, August of 1988. For those of you more, in the legal or regulatory, those are the regulations of COMAR 260207. These regulations are still in effect. In fact, they dictate to us as inspection companies what is an allowable strategy for abatement and or lead-free inspection certificates. And so these regulations establish these appropriate techniques from abatement of lead-containing substances, and they affect group daycare centers and in all residential property, including owner-occupied residential properties. So obviously, the main thrust here to begin with was residences and daycares where children are most likely to be. Next slide. Now, within these regulations of August of 1988, the definition of abate or abatement means the elimination of exposure, to eliminate. And I want to make sure I point out the words of exposure, because that is where we get in trouble. Because it doesn't mean the elimination of the lead paint per se. It means the elimination of that exposure to that lead-containing substance. Hence, we can cover up lead, and we have eliminated that exposure without eliminating the lead-based paints. Now, the definition of a lead-containing substance means any paint, plaster, or other surface coating material containing more than 0.5% of lead by weight, calculated as a lead metal in the dried solid, all right, a little bit of chemistry, or greater than 0.7 milligrams per centimeter squared by the X-ray fluorescent analyzer. So we have two definitions of what is considered a lead-containing substance. Both of these standards are still in effect in the state of Maryland. Interesting enough, I used to be able to say up until a very short time ago that we had the most stringent standard for what is considered a lead-containing substance with the XRF. Question?
Yeah, I just had a question regarding the phrase as the use of the phrase lead metal. Are they talking about metallic lead, or are they talking about any compound that contains lead? Because it's usually a compound called lead carbonate that is the white pigment that's used in lead-based paint. It's not, I mean, the lead is there, but it's not in metallic form. So just questioning the use of that particular phrase.
I'm not a chemist, but I do know that lead carbonate is, as you said, one of the primary ingredients in lead paint, along with lead oxide, lead chromate. So perhaps I need somebody with a little bit more.
Dr. Mitchell, can you help here?
Yeah, so the way XRF works, it just detects lead atoms. Actually, the K electrons of which are the outer electrons of lead specifically fluoresce when hit with an X-ray. So it doesn't make any difference whether the lead is organic, inorganic, or pure lead metal. A lead atom will fluoresce. So it's totally a function of how many lead atoms there are as a function of how many total atoms there are in that sample that you're X-ray fluorescing.
Thanks, Cliff. The other thing is though, too, I will say to you that there are XRFs that are spectrum analyzers that don't only just look at lead. So you're talking about a direct read XRF, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But the point here is to understand, and it needs to be educated to people, that you can have a lead-free certificate with readings less than or equal to 0.7 milligrams per centimeter squared. Now that doesn't make that a safe amount of lead. In fact, again, I say to you, we do not have a safe amount of lead in paint. Therefore, then, non-lead-based paint, 0.7, 0.6 milligrams, could be sanded and create enough lead and dust to create a hazard. So these are not safe amounts of lead in paint. They are just definitions by quantity. Next slide. These same regulations, all right, talk about the two methodologies that are allowed to determine those concentrations of lead in paint. Paint chip sample, and paint chip sampling has to be done a certain way. It's a sample that is, you know, we've got protocols for how to take a paint chip sample. It is not easy. It has to be sent out to a lab in order to be analyzed. And that is the method that is used when you're looking at greater than 0.5%. You can get paint chip sample results in milligrams per centimeter squared. However, the inspector would have to provide the area from which the paint chip sample was taken in order to convert it to milligrams per centimeter squared. You cannot look at paint chip sample of greater than 0.5% and the XRF reading of greater than 0.7 and compare them. They are like mixing, you know, apples and oranges. So the main method that is used is the XRF, as Cliff had mentioned, and as I mentioned here, there actually are two different types of XRFs. There's the spectrum analyzer, and I've just listed a couple of them here that I am aware of. They came from the mining industry. They've been, when the industry of lead paint detection came out, these instruments they read the whole spectrum of metals. And then there are those direct readers. And I listed some of those here too. Now, interesting enough, we have a bunch of different XRFs. And you'll see though that over time, they're not all the same in terms of precision and accuracy. And so what we found out is that some are better than the others, and therefore then protocols had to be developed in order to get accuracy from each of those different instruments. And that was done when the federal government took all of these instruments and studied them and created what are called PCSs, performance characteristic sheets, so that each instrument has to be used according to the PCS in order to have the assurance that you're going to get the accuracy that is going to be similar across all XRFs. And it basically, some of these XRFs went away. Like, I'm sure nobody is in the health department anymore that used the Princeton Gamma Tech, the PGT. It was like a rectangular box. It's archaic. I mean, if I had one now, I'd use it as a doorstop. Would never think of using it as an XRF. Similar with the Warrington micro lead. The one direct reader that is still out in the field and still is a workhorse is RMD, which is now ProTech, the owner of the LPA1. I do not believe the spectrum analyzer, SciTech, the Map Analyzer 3, is still in existence. If Chris, if you know it is, I don't think it is, but the Niton XL is. And to add to these, a new instrument has been added by a company called SciAps. You know, all of these readers, XRFs, they use a radioactive source. The SciAps use a radioactive tube, which is totally different, but is now out in the fields being used. It's probably the newest of the instruments to be allowed to be used to do lead inspections. Next slide. Okay, so in these same regulations, still talking August of 1988, they tell us what the approved methods are for the permanent elimination of exposure. And I will say to you that these are the three that I would say are everybody's go-to removal methods or abatement methods. There's three of them. Removal. just remove it. Remove the component, like a mantelpiece, right? You could just remove it. The lead is gone. Great. Or replacement of the component painted with lead-based paint, such as a window, a door, or trim. Then there's this, enclosure. Now, the word enclosure is not used in the August of '88 regs. It's used the word encapsulation. So, but by definition, the word encapsulation in the August of '88 regs means what I would wish everybody would now use is enclosure. It's a rigid, durable material that relies on a mechanical fastener, like a nail or a screw, drywall, aluminum on exterior window frames. Today, the word encapsulant or encapsulation really refers to liquid coatings. Now, in the August of '88 regs, there is a regulation called the alternative procedures that on a case-by-case basis, somebody could ask to have permission to use an encapsulant liquid coating as part of abatement. But pretty much, I'm not sure of any worthy inspection company allowing an encapsulant for purposes of lead-free. Paint removal. And paint removal can be done one of two ways. Off-site, which does not mean somebody takes it out of a house or a daycare and sandblasts the paint and put it back. It means the use of an off-site stripping company that is in the business of stripping paint. And normally that can be done with chemicals. Or there is on-site paint removal. And those on-site paint removal methods means what they mean, on-site. The use of a heat gun, as long as it's less than 1100 degrees Fahrenheit. That was something that was, the August of '88 regs was amended once it was determined that if you don't regulate the temperature, you might as well burn lead-based paint. And burning of lead-based paint in these regulations, which used to be the norm before these regs went into effect, is an unapproved method, along with a couple of others. Certain chemicals can be used, mostly called caustic chemicals. It does ban chemicals such as methylene chloride, which can cause cancer, which methylene chloride chemicals, I believe, are no longer now even allowed. And then there is this phrase, HEPA attached power tools. So HEPA is our friendly type of filtration that can filter out the really small size particles of lead dust. And if you attach it to a power tool, that's an approved method. Next slide. Unfortunately, these regulations, and I wish we could, one of my recommendations, and I think our group, both Chris and Fred understand, is that we need to tweak our regulations, because non-traditional approved methods, that's my term. These are actually methods that are allowed under the August of '88 regulations for abatement. Canvas-backed vinyl wall covering. I don't know why they're allowed. An XRF certainly will read through them. And then reversal. Take a piece of baseboard and flip it. So these are very non-traditional methods, but they are still in these regulations as approved methods of abatement. I think that needs further discussion at a later date. Next slide. These regulations, when they realized that it was all about dust, they realized that they were no longer going to be able to do unapproved methods such as burning of paint, dry scraping of paint, because of the amount of lead dust. And they also recognized the Maryland Department of the Environment to their, I acknowledge MDE very much so, that they realized that lead safe work practices, even with approved methods, need to be in place. Because even if you're using an approved method, you're going to create dust. So in these August of '88 regulations, I have listed these lead safe work practices that are requirements when you're doing abatement. You got to protect the occupant. You've got to contain the abatement area to control the dust. You have to use these approved methods. You got to follow a certain procedure for cleanup, and then you have to have a final inspection, because even though you might have abated it using approved methods, you still got lead dust there. So dust testing is required at the end. Next slide. So in these August of '88 regulations, I was part of a program that was funded by the state of Maryland. It started in 1987 before the regulations went into effect. And we did abatement in, I don't know how many homes from 1987 to 1991. And basically what we found out in that pilot program following those regulations, the first advantage is that through the use of approved methods and the use of these lead safe work practices outlined in the August of '88 regs, that it did create a more long-lasting lead safe housing stock. In fact, the Kennedy Krieger Institute, in one of their first studies that I was a participant in, we went back into these homes that had been abated using the August of '88 regs approach. And in most cases, we found that longitudinally over time, the lead dust levels were still lower in these homes that had been abated, with one exception. When paint removal was used, especially on friction surfaces such as windows and doors, then the dust levels had accumulated beyond standards that were acceptable. So we know that they worked. The disadvantage was cost, because people had been used to going in, burning off lead-based paint. Doesn't cost much to do that. All right. So putting all of these requirements, the use of approved methods, the use of lead safe work practices, cost exceeded the value of what the property could be sold for. That's what the pilot program found out. We were criticized. Yeah, Fred.
Hey, Susan, I'm sorry to interrupt. But
No, you're fine.
I just wanted to see if maybe we can, I know Wendy's going to send out copies of the slides. Can we kind of skip to the end because we're running out of time?
Sure. Well, I don't think we have much more to go, Fred.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's still like 15 more slides to go.
You know, I am from New York. I do speak fast. I will go faster. I think it's really important. I really do. The other issue is that abatement was only being done in the response to a lead poisoned child. More children are lead poisoned in rental housing. Rental property owners threatened to board up houses. Next slide. Okay, now 1988, 1990, HUD comes up with their first set of guidelines. Their first set of guidelines look a lot like the abatement regulations of August of '88. They have the same advantages and disadvantages, and their guidelines. Interim. Next. Then 2 years later, federal government introduces Title 10, saying that the mere presence of lead paint in our state, that would mean greater than 0.7. Just having greater than 0.7 does not constitute a hazard. But if that lead-based paint is deteriorated, or you've got excessive dust, or it's on friction or on friction surfaces, that's more the priority. That's Title 10, 2 years after the HUD guidelines, 4 years after the August of '88 regs. Next slide. Now, here's your hazard. You got lead paint and it's not in good condition. All right. So now we know that that is the real hazard. Next slide. Title 10 had other requirements. We're going to skip that. Next. This is where, from all of that background, Maryland recognizes everything that's happening, passes new regulations, knowing that doing something is better than nothing. Risk reduction. And that comes out in regulations in November of '95, 3 years after Title 10, and also requires additional training of everybody doing abatement. Next slide. The biggest thing about the November '95 regs is it changes the definition of abatement. So as of November of '95, it means a set of measures designed to eliminate or reduce lead-based paint hazards. And they increase it from not just residential, but public and commercial buildings, and require that all abatement activities be done by people who are accredited. This is huge in the state of Maryland because it allows Maryland Department of the Environment to regulate activities in rental properties. Next. This is just the 3 months later after the '95. This is what leads to Maryland's risk reduction standards in rental properties. Next. This is the requirements where you can either at time of turnover do a lead-free XRF or do the full risk reduction. But this is where the lead-free comes in based off those August of '88 regs. Next. Up until May of 2008, lead inspections were done by the protocols that the inspector submitted to the Maryland Department of the Environment for approval for accreditation. We didn't have protocols for how to do a lead inspection until this set of regulations came out May of 2008. Next. This is the final version of the HUD guidelines. They come out in 2012. And that's all I'll say. Next. So here's the motion. It's just like I'm talking fast. Everything in this industry has changed dramatically in a short period of time. If you look at the CDC level of lead poisoning in the 1980s, when the August of '88 regs came out, it was 25 micrograms per deciliter. Or it could have even have been 45. CDC lowers the definition in the 90s to what's called a level of concern, not lead poison, down to 10. Then they come up with this definition of a reference level in 2012, which means 97.5% of the children have blood lead levels less than 5. And now they've lowered that reference level to 3.5. That's a huge change in the response to a lead level in a child. The other big changes here is that, again, the protocols of how to do a lead inspection have changed dramatically. And I will say to you that the way that an inspection company does a lead inspection today is not how we did a lead inspection back pre-2008 or even in 2015, because just like every other entity has learned from their past and their experiences, so too have business inspectors. I think every inspection company learned that when you test a window frame, you can't just test the window casing and the window sill and the window apron and the window sash. You got to actually test the window inside stop bead. Now, none of that is required under the HUD guidelines, which are in the regulations for how inspections are supposed to be done for lead-free. Next slide. I'm not even going to talk about, the only thing I will talk about is the last bullet point, is that the HUD guidelines are what the inspections companies are regulated to follow. And those HUD guidelines, lead inspection protocols, are only to gain 95% confidence. It does not mean that you are getting all the lead found in a house. And yet you can issue lead-free if you follow the HUD guidelines. Next. So I think we need to rethink the definition of lead-free. And I know that I've taken a lot of time, but we are dedicated, Fred, Chris, and other stakeholders, in looking at what might be necessary to do in order to rethink this definition of lead-free, whether it means changes in definitions of lead-free, all right? Maybe we have a different type of lead-free. Maybe lead-frees aren't allowed in certain properties. And I want to bring up a sticky point, and that is what people are afraid to talk about that I'm not afraid to talk about, is that one of the variables that I think is very important in identifying a lead-poisoned child is looking at the cleanliness of the people. Because you're going to have lead dust in a dirty home, whether you have lead paint or not. And you can have lead paint in a house without a lead-poisoned child, and I'll bet you dollars to donuts it's because of cleanliness. And I'm done. Questions?
Can you go off of mic?
Yep.
Thank you. I just want to, on a baseline, thank you, Susan, for your presentation. I do thank to the committee, right, having a look at things against the current guidelines on dust clearance standards, super important in all of this. I want to just say, while I appreciate the presentation, I take objection of being, yes, cleaning is part of an education. Casting residents as unclean or cleanliness can very much play into some stereotypes that are very difficult and not helpful. And we've had some pretty bad landlords assert things around that. So it's from a commission standpoint, I would like us to stay on the facts of clearance levels, our triggered levels for environmental intervention in the state. Barbara, I was about to call you Dr. Moore.
No, thanks. So thank you very much, Susan. I really appreciate
Can I just say nurses are the most important part of our healthcare system. Sorry, Dr. Mitchell. So nurses rock. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. And nurse practitioners give that little extra.
Yes, there you go. That's right.
So Susan, thank you very much. I really appreciate your presentation and hitting on some really key points. And especially when you mentioned about the 0.7 being required, or 0.7 milligrams per meter square. And even though that's saying it's lead free, for families to know the difference. And that's the one reason we're constantly asking for our families in clinic that we can get the actual report. Because parents are coming away saying, oh, it's lead free, we're all good. And we're trying to explain to them that 0.7, there still could be some there. And the more you're opening your windows or your kids are banging around on the walls or you're rearranging furniture, that potentially is going to cause a problem for your child. So that definitely, anybody that has inspection reports, when we ask, that's the main reason, because we do see the families very often and we want to reinforce that. And in addition to the lead-free definition, I think pretty much all of the definitions need to be looked at again. Because if an inside of a home is inspected and that looks good, but the exterior is not, and then you have the porch that has chipping, peeling, flaking paint, and they go through that every day, and we don't know if there's lead or not, because that might not have been inspected. And full risk reduction, like, nope, it's good, full, everything was done, and dust versus XRF. So I think a lot of the definitions need to be evaluated. So thank you again.
Lurking dangers there. Dr. Mitchell?
Two things. One, just calling attention to Dr. Ikniowski's comment in the chat about the trigger for all of this being the detection of a lead-poisoned child. And I think it's important to note that. The other thing I would note is, I think this presentation, and again, Susan, thanks for putting all that information together. I intend fully to plagiarize those slides and claim that I made them myself in presentations. Thank you for that. If, for the record, I'm not really doing that, just so we're clear.
But you should. I'm honored.
Yeah, but I think this makes all the more important the strategic planning discussion that we've been talking about, because I think this combined with what's happening at the federal level, it makes absolutely imperative the idea that we sit down and think this through systematically.
That's right. I could not agree with that more. Susan, you have your hand up, but I'd like to go to others first and come back to you as the presenter last, please.
Nadia.
Commissioner Hutchinson?
Oh, I actually was gonna kind of say what Dr. Cliff said. Definitely think that this is something that we could talk deeper about in the upcoming strategy, and just overall feel like maybe there's a need for a revamping of how we're thinking about the certification process to better meet this moment. And yeah, interested in like deeper review on how many lead certificates, like if they were retested now, would potentially be invalidated.
That is a really excellent question, and I will ask the commission, the department, and we'll get to we are in early stages of planning for this meeting, but at least if we could have about 3 weeks to a month outside of the meeting circulating we'll have some data questions so that when we go into the strategic meeting, right, that we have a baseline of education and understanding. And to that end, I think this becomes really important that we are still in such a reactive mode in so many ways of our infrastructure, rather than a preventive mode in housing and other systems. And I think this highlights that. Adam? And I don't see who the other one is. Can you?
It's Mangela. Adam and
I echo your comment, but I just want to remind everybody that a lot of these regs are only applicable to rental properties. And that's the way that this law was originally drafted. So if 40 or 50% of poisoned children are coming from rental properties, we need to be reviewing that, and it's super important. But we also continue to drop the ball on the other 40 or 50% of children that live in owner occupied, or they're getting it from other sources. So I think there needs to be a much more, going to what Cliff said, this needs to be a much more holistic approach, not hyper focusing only on rental property.
Yeah, and I could not agree more. I think at the time in 93, there had been a commission set up by the state. Its charge was to look only at rental properties. In 94, we went to the legislature because it was reported to be from the state at the time the significantly highest proportionality and urgent need to start attacking the issue of childhood lead poisoning. I agree 100%. We have left behind generations of kids who grow up in older homeowner occupied properties, low, moderate income and otherwise, who get just looked passed over here or go and visit aunt, uncle's house, grandparents' house, etc. So I agree that we should use the strategic planning day or two or more that is going to be needed to calibrate that we are really getting a larger holistic approach here. Mangela.
Thank you, Susan. It's a great learning. Just to reiterate that when we talk about blood lead level, we say there is no safe level. Just like that, we would have to develop a slogan, no safe level in the environmental testing also for lead. The reason is we do require lead testing for all childcare homes, regardless of whether it's rented or owner occupied when they start the business. But we do get the reports that say with the levels and say it is within the expected level. It can be 0.6, it can be 0.5. And we won't be able to do anything unless there is a chipping and peeling paint. And our licensing would go after 2 years, and then they visually inspect. And if there is any kind of any crack, any chipping and peeling paint, and then we will be requiring them to retest. So it really now kind of distraught to see hey, we do get lead certificates that have 0.5, 0.6 levels, and we don't do anything. So maybe something with the lead inspectors for them to provide some additional education when they are testing to say, hey, even when you get the report, these are the things you can do to prevent lead exposure to the children. Something they should carry it with them as a pamphlet or flyer when they are going for the lead testing, and leave it with the parents and the family people so that it's a constant reminder for them.
It could even, Minjal, it could be a regulation that even in a lead-free property, all paint should be intact.
Chipping, peeling, flaking paint is a violation of the law in the state of Maryland. And that is a fact that chipping, peeling, flaking paint is a violation of the law in the state of Maryland. Inspectors should be enforcing that in their inspections.
But lead inspectors are not doing that, Ruth Ann. And even though it's the law,
excuse me, Susan, let me finish.
Sure.
Okay. The ground rules here, let's do that, right? But I say this as we think about how we can more strategically ensure that what is in the law and what is adopted by court precedent here across the board. One of the things that HB 760 or whatever it was called back in 94 did establish is that chipping, peeling, flaking paint is a violation of law in the state of Maryland. If it is not being enforced, if it's not being holistically enforced, we need to do that. That is part of the purpose behind the notice of defects for tenants. It doesn't get to the issue of homeowners. It does need to be crosswalked. There is a really important crosswalk that has to happen for code enforcement and health-based code enforcement here. So certainly it is something that we need to draw on what exists. Susan?
Just as a follow-up on that, Ruth Ann, I do believe, and certainly MDE can correct me if I'm wrong, but once a property that's lead-free is not subject to the chipping, peeling, flaking, only a limited lead-free. And I'm agreeing that it should be, lead-free should have all paint intact. I think it only exists on unlimited lead-frees, that all exterior paint has to be in good condition. So, and since, you know, EPA is supposed to be giving us, which probably is not going to happen in the next 4 years, a safe amount of lead, as they have done for dust, they are required to give us a safe amount of lead in paint, which has not been done. So as far as I'm concerned, what I always educate people on, whether they're rental or owner occupied, is you have to have a house that's clean and you have to have all paint intact, regardless of lead content. And I don't mean to use cleanliness as a prejudice, but I do think that in even a lead-free house, because lead is ubiquitous in our society, you're gonna have lead dust, even in a property without lead paint, or even, so that cleanliness is very important, regardless of whether it's rental or owner occupied. And I do believe that it plays a role in whether or not a child has an elevated blood level.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else on this topic? I think Nadia, Cliff, that's all. We have a lot of meat on the bone here for our discussion planning. And we thank you, Susan. Let's move. Wendy, what is next on the agenda, please?
Fred wanted to mention about spring into action. I'm not sure if you got that flyer done or not, Fred.
Yeah. I don't have a copy with me, but just to let you guys know, on our social media page and Instagram page, and just program wide, the lead program is adopting each month as a different theme to bring awareness to the public about lead prevention. And this month is Spring into Action. So we're ironically looking at, spring cleaning and things like that, what materials to use, and just the combined hazards of lead as children start to venture outside more because of the weather, or bringing dust inside and taking your shoes off and things like that. So just look out for the flyer. But we are trying to do more outreach in conjunction with GHHI to make lead prevention a household name, if you will.
Well, I think if we have an opportunity, and anyone has an opportunity in groups that are going to see families, parents, et cetera, we ought to have some sort of presentation prepared at that, and maybe even a webinar for parents groups, reaching out to parent groups and doing that, and welcome that. That's great. I kind of get a motion that you're going to have a video of Fred on Instagram, bringing into action, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Nadia and Cliff, would you like to talk about? I know we have our day coming up for meeting on for the planning here. Any updates or you want to give on that?
Nadia, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think just flagging that if there was any other commissioners that wanted to join the planning session, that would be super helpful. Specifically any maybe city agencies would be great.
Sorry, Susan has her hand up.
Thank you, Cliff. Are we invited as commissioners? And if so, when is strategic planning meeting?
We will send out dates through the commission on when we are meeting to have the discussions for planning. And when we will also be sending out, I hope, and I think we talked about this, Nadia and Cliff, a pre-survey, so that if you cannot participate by coming to the planning meetings, that the survey will try to capture that. So if folks have questions, do that. I have to step out for one second. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Wendy and Fred and I can help you guys with that survey if need be.
Yeah, and that would be great. Thank you, Paula. So, and Adam, go ahead.
But do we have a person who's going to facilitate strategic planning lined up?
We've been talking about that. We don't have a person yet, but we have been talking about the need and desire for some formal facilitation, given the nature. And I would just add, so the strategic plan, the purpose of this strategic planning is really, I think, twofold, as we've discussed it, and Ruth Ann can feel free to jump in here. One is, and I think the primary is to set the overall, to identify, given where we are as a state in lead right now, what we should be thinking about as our vision for lead and lead poisoning prevention over the next, and we've talked about 5 to 10 years as a window, but it's really to set sort of the direction for lead poisoning. And I think that a sort of a secondary part of that, and Ruth Ann should feel free to jump in here, is to use, in the context of that overall direction, to set some specific goals for the commission as well, which would be SMART. That is to say, specific, measurable, actionable, and time limited to help guide the commission in its work over the next several years, but with respect to that long-term vision. So Ruth Ann and Nadia, I think that's sort of the overall substance of what we came to. Yes?
Yes. And one of the things, and Nadia, I didn't mean to jump in front of you if you were about, but thank you. As we think about this too, I want to make sure that we do a couple of things, right? That the Maryland legislature doesn't hear from us necessarily, or the governor's office hear from us except for an annual report and maybe a letter here and there. So I do think it's really important for them to know that we have some important goals here, especially in light of the federal landscape of what will the state be able to do to keep advancing on ensuring that we are advancing this work, leaving no one behind, and making sure that the state is not left on an island because of the federal actions. But I hope the strategy plan will also strengthen groundwork throughout the state, that communities feel much more engaged and involved, from Garrett County down to the Eastern Shore. And I want to make sure that we're talking about that. And many years ago, Cliff, I think you were around to know this, but maybe it was, I don't know. But we ran a very effective interagency work group that was very proactive, chaired by Georges Benjamin, who now is at APHA. And I think we have to also really urge that happens, and that the commission is weighing in not only to our terrific MDE secretary up through the ranks here, but to Housing Community Development, to Department of Health, Department of Labor, and the Children's Cabinet and the like. We've got to be able to be pushing actions here. I would say one of the things that I think we struggle with as a state is really supporting our childcare industry sector and really equipping them. And how are we equipping every aspect of the sector to be preventive and strengthening what we're doing in the district court level. So I think it's an important inflection time, an important time to rethink the universe here after 30 years. And, I think part of it too is to look at what has been success for for rental property owners who have helped to do their part, the ones who have helped to do their part, learn from what's been successful there to try to get to the incalcitrant ones. And how do we prevent against the fraud that we're seeing in some of these? What we're seeing in green environmental is what we were fearing to be in a massive sense years ago. And here we are 20, 30 years later. And because sometimes people think nobody's paying attention, here it shows up. So we are getting a date on the calendar. We'll have that by the next meeting. Nadia, yes.
Yeah, on this piece about interagencies working together, I think it would also be helpful to talk about coordination with our courts as well. It's really surprising to hear and talk with more lawyers about how in rent escrow, they are seeing cases of fraud on lead certificates or bad lead remediation in homes, but there isn't as much coordination. I actually spoke with a lawyer who their client's lead certificate was a blank sheet of paper. And that was what the landlord was trying to say was their lead certificate. And so I think there's a lack of communication between some of the court systems that are talking with tenants.
Yeah, Nadia, let me say this, that one of the things that with the refunding of the lead program on the that MDE has recently done, there is a plan to reinstitute what we used to do, which is district court training that also includes tenant advocate lawyers and rental escrow actions. So I think we need to bring that to highlight also for the commission to get a report on that. But one of the things that I charged Laura with is to dust off that district court training, not only of the judges and their clerks, but of the lawyers that are going into district court, reinstitute the training, having somebody in district court when these things happen, recording that, and building a mechanism for the to refer those immediately to MDE. So yes, it should be on our agenda. And secondarily, for that instance, would be good to know because we need to get that case connected over to enforcement at MDE. And I'm not sure today the district court judges are taking that action. I think people leave the courtroom and think the courts are going to call MDE, and they don't. So we need to address short good point. Adam?
Just to stay at 30,000 feet, because where Nadia and Cliff started. Number one, I'm happy to volunteer to help set up strategic planning. And two, before you do a survey, in my opinion, you need to figure out who that strategic planning facilitator is, because some facilitators have certain questions phrased in certain ways that they think garners better response than just kind of the standard SWOT analysis stuff. So I think you start with who's the facilitator, and then you go from there in terms of figuring out the date and getting the survey out to commissioners, et cetera, et cetera.
Since Nadia, do you remember what our next meeting is or club?
I don't think we have one scheduled yet, but I can follow up and send some dates after today's call and include Adam in it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we thank you for that, and let's get that coordinated because we want to get to that. I think Wendy, the next, and thank you for all of we'll set up a mechanism by which people can put their ideas together in addition to the survey. But if you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning with something, you're in the shower, you think of something, whatever, email us so that we can be bringing it into consideration. Commission recess 2025. Wendy, what is that?
Yeah, I was just mentioning that we if you guys wanted to change anything, but currently the last vote was that the commission would break July, August, and December. Are we still keeping that, or did anybody want to? I think there was a comment sometime last year about the December one. I know we had made a change. Was it because Healthy Homes Month was moved or something? I think that's why we.
Yeah, we expanded into June one year when we were not meeting in June. So we've added June into the active meetings. And we did that because we did the Henderson Hopkins meeting out in the community. I would love to still have the June meeting if we can do it some way that's engaging the public. I know it's not a ton of planning ahead of time, but I think it's a really good discipline, either in June or September, to have us out somewhere that is accessible to families, to parents who are key at this. It may be at this rate that we might need to do that in September, but I think we need to be way more accessible than sitting virtually or in a conference room on an issue that we want to engage the public. Cliff?
So I guess my only thought with respect to the strategic planning is with respect to the strategic planning meeting, which is depending upon when it's going to be. And my guess is we haven't agreed on a firm date yet, but it's unlikely to be before June and probably unlikely to be in November for other reasons. But that being said, one of these we would also need to think about whether or not we have both the strategic planning meeting and a regular commission meeting, or whether it takes the place of one of the commission meetings.
I think we had talked about it combining in with the June meeting at our
That
conversation.
was my recollection, but I didn't want to preclude the boss.
Yeah, I think what we could do is have a shortened formal meeting in June and then use the balance of the day for strategic planning was a thought, since and try to combine those activities. And I don't know if there's any thought on that right now. The question on the table is, does anyone have objection to the calendar of the commission meetings for the balance of the year? And if not, we'll leave the calendar. We may augment it with the strategic meeting. But any objections to the calendar as published here?
No. Okay.
We reserve the right to call and a meeting if need be for some reason of massive federal change, or if there's something critically happening in those months for those who can attend. Thank you for that. Going around the bend here, MDE, anything further?
Nothing for me.
MDH.
A couple of things. We are in the process, as I have mentioned before, of doing an evaluation of our home visiting program for lead and asthma in combination with our Medicaid partners. And I expect that evaluation will provide some useful data for the strategic plan in terms of sort of what we've been doing and how we've been progressing. And that includes an evaluation of particularly the home visiting intervention and its impact on childhood lead levels, costs of care, et cetera. That's the other big thing that we are doing, and this is, I think, wrapped up with what's happening at the CDC. We are in the midst of applications for many of our funded programs that depend entirely on funding from CDC cooperative agreements. Some of that includes work on lead. And in particular, our environmental public health tracking program, which is the largest cooperative agreement we have here in the department related to environmental health. I think that we don't know what the future holds. I am not optimistic, but I think we have not yet heard any formal communication about what that might mean. I will say, with respect to Ruth Ann's comment, that all of our epidemiology, surveillance, analysis capacity with respect to environmental health is largely federally funded. And so that is entirely at this point unclear as to what capacity may still be possible after we hear whatever happens to the CDC cooperative agreements.
Take a breath. Right? Got to keep this moving. And one quick thing, I still owe EPA a report on the 3 lead analyzer testing systems. So if you could send me an update on that, please.
Yeah, we are actually in the process of contacting the 3 local health departments and arranging for them to take possession of those. We're also looking at opportunities. We have a grant that we are just about to, I am in the process of a supplemental grant from ASTO, the Association of State and Territorial Health Officials, part of which I am actually thinking about using to purchase additional test kits for the reagents to use.
EPA may have others, so let me make an inquiry there. If that's,
oh, that would be really helpful, Ruth Ann.
Yep. So we'll ask. It's mostly the same personnel that we were dealing with on that, so I think that's a topic, right? So that should be helpful. Dr. Ichanowski, please.
Yeah, I don't have anything new to add as far as the AAP goes. I am looking forward to strategic planning to continue to work to reduce children's exposure to lead, because preventing the exposure is the treatment goal that we really need to stay focused on. We can't keep using kids as the canary in the coal mine to identify where the lead is. It's just not the way that should be done, but that's the way it's been done for decades.
No doubt, and thank you. Mandela, MSDE, and Mandela, I know MSDE is undergoing severe cuts generally. So
yes,
I'll go out on that.
Nothing significant to report in reference to lead efforts.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, MIA.
Benita's not here, but I don't know if anybody else is.
Adam,
No.
are you seeing any changes in the insurance markets on lead at all?
No, not that I've heard.
I know the cost of general liability pollution insurance for lead has gone significantly up. Something we may want to talk about. Nicola, any other updates? You gave a great update last meeting. Thank you for that.
Yeah, not much else. So as I mentioned, the Office of Lead Hazard awards are moving forward. The bill passed in both chambers, so we're looking forward to being able to onboard local nonprofits into our rehabilitation programs, and we are preparing for that for the summer.
Just so you know, there was some sort of urgent announcement, just put out by HUD, for looks like 1:20 today, so you might check your email, on that. So, not sure what it is, but it is, 1:20 today, Damien Slaughter. So,
I don't see it. Maybe if it's relevant, you could forward it to me.
Yep, you got it.
Thank you.
All right, Department of Housing, Community Development, City of Baltimore.
I'll defer to Kat or Nakia if they're on the line.
Hi, everybody. Some updates from the lead hazard reduction program. We are also in our transition period, meaning this year is when one grant is ending and our next one is to begin. Right now, we've been in negotiations, which are actually towards the end. So we have a official start date with HUD for this month. We just have a few finalizations to do with the board, and then we'll be enrolling units for our new grant, which is Baltimore citywide. So that's.
Okay, thank you. City Health Department, please.
Good morning, everyone. No lead effort updates, but we have been struggling to find 2 environmental sanitarians. We wanted to put that out there. Maybe you guys can put it in your networks, but I guess with the time of being certified, finding a case of getting your certificate of eligibility, which takes about 6 days, we haven't been able to hire 2 sanitarians, which is a desperate need for the city. So once we reach out to HR, I will be sending that link just to put it out in the networks that we are in need of sanitarians.
Yeah, Brianna, if you send it to Wendy and send it to me, we'll make sure it gets out. In that, are you willing to hire people that you will train up, or do they have to be pre-qualified?
So it's kind of both. We're willing to train up. It's also a requirement to train up. You have to pass the NEHA. So it's not something where you could just stay complacent as a 1. The goal is for you to also to become a 2. So we are willing to train. We cross train. We're also training with our partners at the all together with food and ecology. So we have been interviewing people, and some have been choosing to do food and ecology over lead. So we are looking for people who are passionate about providing resources and education in regards to prevention of lead.
Well, thank you. Count on us to help you at GHHI. We'll help the members of the commission to spread this as well. We need to get those. You're right. And thank you for reaching out to this network to help on that. Young, gifted, and green.
Okay, I'll keep it quick.
I have a question for you, Nadia. What happens when the members of Young, Gifted, and Green turn 40?
I don't know. That's a great question. It might be young-ish, gifted, and green.
Young at heart. Okay. You're far from that, so I'm not worried about it.
But for updates, we are continuing our lead service line inventory work, primarily currently focused in the San Tom Winchester area. There is a lot of construction that's currently going on that might be disrupting some of the water pipes. And so DPW has requested that we prioritize inventory work in this specific neighborhood to make sure that if any homes do test positive for lead, that homes get lead filters.
Nadia, the city of Baltimore just participated in a lawsuit against the EPA with the Southern Environmental Law Center. What I believe that was around the lead in water issue. Do you know much about that?
No, I don't. I can look into it more though and provide updates in the next call.
That'd be great. Thank you so much. GHHI, anything you would like to share?
I mean, if Shadia is on the call,
Shadia,
it'd be better.
We're gonna have you be.
Sorry
Absolutely.
for you.
No worries. Hi, everyone. So, with the assumption that we want to continue Healthy Homes Month in April, and I'm not sure if that's changed this year.
Let me be very clear, Shadia. HUD has told us they are not doing Healthy Homes Month, but if GHHI is, so let's go.
Perfect. Amazing. So with that, we are doing Healthy Homes Month. So Laura and I are doing a Healthy Homes tour in which we're going to about 5 Baltimore City schools and Judy centers and Head Starts to present on lead laws, tenants' rights. So basically under the vein that we were just discussing about the importance of outreach and education to our families. So that is what we will be doing throughout the month of April. And then we're having a 6th presentation at Red Emma's Free School, again with the same topics on April 22nd. And then with that, of course, the Asthma Summit is on May 20th at Morgan State University at their Behavioral and Social Sciences Center. So if you would like to attend, I will be sure that someone gets the registration link so that we can send that out. That is all that I have.
Wendy, I'll just ask if you would share that on behalf of the Maryland Department of Health and GHHI. We are talking about asthma, but the underlying healthy housing issues relate over to lead. So if we could get that out to the commission. And you've got what, 3,000 people now signed up, I think, for the
Actually
asthma.
100. Yeah, we're right at 100. So our capacity is 125. So we'll see.
Same thing. New math, same thing. All good. Wes, Angela, anybody else have anything there? Updates?
Nothing additional.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioner updates? Any comments from the public? Thank you, everybody. We will see you next month. I think this is incorrect. At the bottom of the agenda says the next meeting is Thursday, June 1st. I don't believe that's correct, Wendy.
Yes, that is a typo. Sorry about that.
Next meeting is the first Thursday
April,
in May.
It's May. Yeah, May 1st.
Okay.
May
All
1st.
right. So on May Day, we will gather. We are inviting you to come in person here to the lovely conference room to get to know it, because it's where we are likely to hold our strategic planning day with lots of good food. And if we get more than Laura and myself being guests, we will sponsor some, maybe some treats for the next meeting to get people here. We want to thank Wendy for her support, Fred and Paula, and please get your comments, suggestions in for strategic planning, and thank you for your good questions and discussion very much. Appreciate all of you. Thank you.
Thank you all.